So now it's my very, very great pleasure to introduce Gadigal Bundjalung man, Craig Madden, to give the welcome to country. Please welcome Craig. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. Bujiri Gamarua, everyone. G'day and welcome. My name is Craig Madden, and I'd like to start by thanking the Australian National Maritime Museum for inviting me here today to welcome you onto country. I'm a proud Bundjalung Gadigal man from the Eora Nation, and Gadigal land is the land on which we are standing here today. Jinyura Gadigal. This land is Gadigal. It is customary for our Aboriginal people to invite our guests or visitors onto our country. It's a practice that we've been doing for thousands of years, offering you safe passage as you pass through our lands. So as a representative of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council and a proud Gadigal man, I'd like to welcome you all onto Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. I'd like to pay my respects to our elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge the stories and traditions of our Aboriginal people on this land. To any Aboriginal brothers and sisters, or if you have any brothers and sisters on the Torres Strait Islands, welcome. To all our non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters here today, welcome to Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. Our Gadigal clan is one of the 29 clans which make up the Eora Nation. It's a nation that's bound by 3 distinct landmarks. So we have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Nepean River to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Within the boundaries of those mighty rivers lie the Eora Nation, and the land of our Gadigal people is one of the 29 clans of that nation. To our guests from across the seas today, if you're from across our great country, great states, and this magnificently beautiful city of ours, welcome to Gadigal land. I hope you all enjoy the event. It's been a wonderful day, full of emotions and laughs, and it really does make you proud to be part of this wonderful multicultural nation of ours. Enjoy the event. On behalf of our Gadigal mob, the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council and its members, once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Craig, and I think that's especially poignant and powerful given that we are gathered here today on Gadigal, Barmal and Bardu, lands and waters, to really celebrate this place and settler cultures layering themselves upon First Nations cultures. So thank you again. That's a very generous welcome. So I'd again like to elaborate by paying my respects to traditional owners and elders past and present, not just here today, but all around Australia, as we are the National Maritime Museum. My name is Dana Fletcher, and I'm a Senior Executive Strategy and External Relations here at the museum. I'm of Latvian and Anglo-Celt background, and the names of both my mother, who arrived as a refugee in 1949 as a young child, and my great-great-great-grandfather, who arrived as the maybe slightly challenged second son of a gentleman farmer in Tasmania in 1820. Both their names are inscribed on the monument. So it's my pleasure to be with you today as your MC, and really thank you all for coming. It's been a tremendous day. So I'd like to welcome you all as donors and supporters of Australia's National Monument to Migration, and here at the Australian National Maritime Museum, our Museum of the Sea. We're gathered here to unveil panels on the National Monument to Migration. So firstly, there's some distinguished guests present, so I'd like to acknowledge Jose Vasquez Rivas, Consul of the Republic of El Salvador, Mr. Frank van Beuningen, Consul General of the Netherlands, Tom O'Donnell, who's just actually issued his apologies, unfortunately, from the Anima Foundation, Peter Dukas, OAM, Chair of the Ethnic Communities Council of New South Wales, Yanis Chechins from the Latvian Society of New South Wales. Also to donors and supporters of the museum, councillors of the museum and directors of the foundation board, and other distinguished guests. That's all of you, so thank you very much for coming. We've had such an overwhelming response to our invitations to unveil these panels that we have held not one, but 3 ceremonies today to commemorate and celebrate Australia's cultural identity. So it's a really big day for us, and the stories have again been powerful, poignant and compelling when we see what's happening around the world. So today, the 20th of March, we mark the International Day of Happiness. It's sort of a fitting theme for today's occasion, which celebrates and commemorates the contribution migrants have been made to this country. And tomorrow is National Harmony Day, and also the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So we hope that today can remind us all of the great fortune that we have shared in this collective of communities, united in a celebration of both journeying and of coming home. So last year, the National Monument was proclaimed by the Governor-General as such. It was previously known as the Welcome Wall. So this affirms it as a nationally significant landmark, and you are all part of it. So today, we're adding more than 1,200 names to the National Monument to Migration of people who represent 73 countries. Quite remarkable. The top 10 communities represented in today's ceremonies are the UK, Italy, Greece, Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, Hungary, South Africa, Ireland, Philippines, and Latvia. The beautiful Balts who came after the Second World War. So please raise your hand if you're a migrant or the child of a migrant. Wonderful. Well, today really is all about you. So your names and those of your forebears join more than 30,000 inscriptions on the National Monument to Migration. So you, altogether, this paints a picture of a diverse Australia and a diverse and important national story. So some housekeeping, because not everyone could make it today. It is a national program, and that's very, very important. We are the National Maritime Museum, and we represent all of Australia. So the event is some people could not make it, and the event is being live streamed, and we'll send links out. It'll also be recorded, all three ceremonies. So I really would encourage you to tune in to the speeches. Actually remarkable. And if you'd like to share your experience of the day and you're posting videos and photos, please use the hashtag #SeaMuseum, as in SEA Museum. We do have a film crew with us recording the event, obviously. Thank you. If you prefer not to be photographed or filmed, please make yourselves known to Evan up there at the AV booth. And we also have wonderful performers. You heard Tina. We'll have other wonderful performers peppered around the site, and an accordion player to guide you to the National Monument after the ceremony. So I'd like to thank them. I think they're doing a great job. So it's now my very great pleasure to introduce Mr. Dan Janes. Dan is a director and chair of the Australian National Maritime Museum Foundation. Please welcome Dan.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone. And it's great actually to be able to be here all again in person and see a gathering of this nature. And secondly, it's really great to be able to say that we're gathering on a sunny Australian day. So I too acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the Bamble and Bardu, lands and water on which we meet, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nation people who are present here today. Today, we're honouring nearly 1,300 additional migrants on the National Monument to Migration. As you've heard, there were so many names that we've had to hold 3 special ceremonies in order to accommodate everyone. We thank you for your attendance and your patience in the past year as we've dealt with the COVID pandemic. The monument, as you know, features over 30,000 names from over 200 countries. And for the first time, we welcome names from Afghanistan, Gabon, Sierra Leone, and Somalia. The people and the experiences that are effectively ascribed on the monument speak to universal themes of belonging, love, adventure, family, safety, and ultimately striving for a better life and opportunity. Some are journeys of loss and sadness, some of triumph, but ultimately all speak of hope and a desire for the opportunity that Australia can provide. Thank you to all those who have donated to the Migration Heritage Fund in support of the Monument to Migration. The National Monument is an important way for the museum to honour, collect and hold your stories, which collectively are our national story. The names inscribed on the monument speak to an important pillar of national history. As a nation, we are diverse, and we are stronger for that diversity. My mother, who's in the audience, came over to see my daughters who were born in Australia. We moved here 20 years ago. And we were lucky enough to come here for opportunity. But she shared a family story with them of her parents and our family, who in Europe had to flee Belarus, had to flee Poland, had to flee Austria due to persecution, due to war, and eventually through France found safe haven in the UK, and eventually were attracted by the opportunity that Australia and New Zealand could provide and moved around here to the world. As we see this, there is no better time to acknowledge that people come to Australia. We are joined by a collective humanity, our acceptance, our freedoms, and we are a strong nation and a stronger nation for the migration and welcoming attitude that we can provide. So I just want to thank everyone for being part of this and everyone for acknowledging the importance of the Migration Monument. The museum's migration-related activities include developing collections, exhibitions, programs and events, and we have an exciting digital migration program in the future. All of this is to bind us to the story and the essence of what migrants can provide to Australia. We come back to that theme of shared humanity, of freedom, acceptance, and Australia being an opportunity, but also a safe haven for all. We are the only national cultural institution with a focus on migration, and as you can tell, we have ambitions to do more in the space. There are new migrants from many countries who are establishing themselves in their new country, who are not represented on the monument. And we'd like to address that with our Honour a New Migrant initiative. We thank our partners, Settlement Services International and Multicultural Australia, in helping bring these names and stories of refugees and new migrants to the monument. And we look forward to your support in the fundraising of this initiative. Thank you again for your current donation. And to all of our speakers and performer, I've really enjoyed Tina. It was a fantastic song, and I have to say, whenever I hear I Still Call Australia Home, I can't help but get a bit of a lump in my throat when I come back on a plane on that. Thank you for your time and your art. To the many community organisations and associations who have helped to spread the word, I'd like to thank you. In particular, the Greek Orthodox community of New South Wales, the Kytherian Association of Australia, COAS IT, the Italian Association of Assistants, Australia Korean Foundation, Multicultural New South Wales, Welcoming Australia, and the Filipino community in particular, the Australia Filipino magazine, Kababa Ichang, Re Zalista Inc., and Radio Tagumpay. Also, many thanks to the consulants and chambers of commerce who have assisted us. And finally, to our media partner, SBS. You are our founding partner of the museum's original welcome program, and we thank you for your continued support, leadership and passion for multiculturalism as the monument fills its new role as the Australian National Migration Monument. I'd also like to thank our own team for their hard work and bringing this day and many others to life. But before I finish, I would like to thank all of you. Many of you have called Australia home. We've heard stories around here from people coming in the 1950s to last year. Australia, through those generations, has provided a home. We've had families here. We've raised children here, and it has provided a huge opportunity for people. We should remain welcoming. We should remain acknowledging of our own freedoms, and we should remain accepting of others. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Violet Roumeliotis, AM, CEO of Settlement Services International. SSI, that's Settlement Services International, is a community organisation and social business that works to support newcomers to Australia and other vulnerable individuals to help them realise their potential. During her 10 years as CEO, Violet has taken SSI from a Sydney-based organisation to a national behemoth, really. She's doing tremendous work, and among her many accolades, Violet was made a member of the Order of Australia for outstanding service to community in 2020, and she's a former Telstra Businesswoman of the Year and was named in the Australian Financial Review's Top 100 Women of Influence. So please welcome Violet Roumeliotis.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute honour and pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Dana. And also Dan, the work of the foundation and its fundraising is critical to collecting and showcasing the many stories of our history here at this great museum. I would like to pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and their elders past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Ancestors have walked this country, and I acknowledge their special and unique place in our nation's historical, cultural and linguistic identity. And I am really pleased to be here today. In my role as the CEO of Settlement Services International, we have the privilege of greeting many new migrants and refugees on their arrival to Australia and connecting them to services and programs and communities that help them find their feet in the new country. Migrants bring so much richness to our country, and indeed, Australia is one of the world's great multicultural success stories. And so it is fitting that there be a national cultural institution with responsibility for and a permanent gallery dedicated to this success story. Now, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 30% of Australia's population is now born overseas, and we saw that with those who lifted their hands today. And the economic contribution of migrants has been well documented as being invaluable. Research from Oxford University's Professor Ian Golding found that migrants are 2 to 3 times more likely to start a business, 2 to 3 times more likely to win a Nobel Prize, and 2 to 4 times more likely to lodge patents. It's pretty remarkable. But of course, this doesn't include the rich cultural and social contribution that migrants bring, along with admirable traits like resilience and adaptability. So the research also shows that a warm welcome from the local community makes a big difference in enabling newcomers to feel part of the community and being enabling newcomers to feel part of things, part of their local community, and also we see being part of the National Monument to Migration is an extension of that welcome. The sense that you now belong here, that this is your home, and that your story matters, and your family's contributed and is being honoured. Being here brings back memories of my late father, and so it's a bit of an emotional time for me. My parents arrived to Australia after the Second World War and the Civil War in Greece. They came here seeking a better life. My dad had wanted to study dentistry, and whilst he commenced his studies, the Civil War broke out. He joined the National Forces and indeed won a bravery award. But after the war, he was not able to continue his studies. And he made the very bold decision, I think, to come to Australia. But it was a great decision. The transition was a real culture shock for him, though. But he arrived with aspirations and was introduced to my mother. And I think 3 months later, they married and then went on to have 3 girls, my sisters and myself. And my father opened a corner store, and we know that was the salvation of many Greeks at the time, the great corner store, and opened many other similar businesses after that. And I do joke that I never had a free Saturday until I got married and left the family home, because working in the family business. And I think, you mentioned about the Telstra Businesswoman's Award. I think that learning in those corner shops, meeting people and being everything, in terms of supporting my parents, really laid the foundations for good business acumen. But Mum and Dad worked very long hours, and as many of you would probably relate to people who've got small businesses. And while they were making sure us kids had access to great educational opportunities, lots of books around the house, music and dancing lessons, of course, your usual piano and flute and Greek dancing, Greek school, and lots of picnics and family events going on the weekend, with our mums mostly, because our dads were working and we didn't see them much. But as a child, I saw firsthand their resilience and optimism, and the support they had from the surrounding Greek community, and the support that they offered in turn to others as passionate and active leaders in the community. Because of course, organisations like SSI and the ECC of New South Wales didn't exist at that time. But even so, even with our services, the role of diaspora communities, of community, faith organisations, cultural, they can't be replaced by professional services. They play a critical role in making people feel welcomed and part of community. And organisations like ours work very, very closely with civil society organisations that probably many of you represent in many ways. My parents were hardworking and humble, and at one stage they did actually mortgage a family home, and a small block of land was bought in East Terrace in Bankstown in the southwest, and the first Greek Orthodox church in Bankstown was built, and it's now a thriving parish. I'm very proud of what my parents and many others then contributed to that great social and physical infrastructure for all of us. I saw the things they did to integrate into Australia, into the Australian community, while also continuing to embrace and celebrate their own cultural heritage. And as their daughter, I do stand here today very proud of my dual Greek-Australian heritage. It wasn't always rosy, and I think that's the truth, and we need to reflect on that. And we know that there was, I saw it myself, a lot of racism, discrimination and hardship. However, it is about optimism and resilience. And when we hear of our communities arriving in our shores today from Afghanistan and Ukraine, hopefully, these are the stories that remind us that as a country we are very welcoming, but we can step up and do more around identity and around being inclusive of all communities. Now, I first heard about the National Monument to Migration many years ago when it was called the Welcome Wall. My dad had passed, it was in 1990, and the family wanted a way to honour him and his contribution, his memory and his life. And so the story of the Katsaris family is now part of this collection of personal stories and family histories. However, in recent discussions with the museum, I became aware that not all countries were well represented on the monument. And so my organisation initiated a program with the museum called Honour a New Migrant, as Dan mentioned. It does cost to incorporate those stories into the monument, and we are well aware that new migrants and refugees may not be in the position to be able to fund them themselves. So part of the initiative, SSI, along with Multicultural Australia in Queensland, helps identify individuals and families who might like to have their stories historically recorded in this way, and the museum provides the funds through its generous donation program. So please support it if you can, either through your organisations having a fundraiser or you contribute to it. It'd be great to have some of these stories documented in more recent communities as well. And together with the museum, we hope to develop a fully rounded collection of stories of the migrant experience, as this is vital to understanding the Australian identity and enhancing how diverse people are reflected in our national identity. And building awareness of the migration experience in Australia in turn helps promote understanding and greater community harmony. That connection, nothing can be replaced. So in gathering these stories, we must not forget our First Nations people and their stories as the original inhabitants and custodians of this land. And the museum does good work in this space, but I do hope that one day we will see a First Nations voice to Parliament enshrined in our Constitution. I think that's long overdue. Today I'm proud to say that 14 people we have come to know through the settlement program are being honoured today. They come from Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Samoa, Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey and South Africa. It is so important to have this broad representation, as this accurately reflects the richness of the migrant experience. Congratulations to you all, and I hope you feel warmly welcomed and truly a part of Australia's multicultural success. Thank you very much.
Well, a special thanks to Violet and Settlement Services International for the speech today particularly, but also for the Honour New Migrant campaign. We work with Multicultural Australia in addition to Settlement Services International to represent new migrants and refugees from around Australia. So if you are encouraged to donate, please see one of our staff at front of house after the ceremony, or go on our website. We'd love to receive your gift. So, special guest, I think now we can have a little break and welcome Chantal Sneddon to sing the national anthem. Chantal has a Lebanese and Scottish background. Please welcome Chantal.
Australians, all let us
Shintan. So it's now my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Dr. Hae Jin Park. Hae Jin has many faces and many careers in her lives, and she's currently a researcher and historian specialising in Korean studies. She's delving into the history of Australian missionaries in Korea. Born in Busan, South Korea, Hae Jin recalls that Australia was a constant presence throughout her childhood. Her life and her work explores a deep relationship between our countries, a relationship born over the seas. So please welcome Hae Jin Park.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders, and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of this land, past, present, and future. I would also like to offer my thoughts to everyone affected by the recent floods in Queensland and New South Wales, as well as friends in Europe living through a bellicose moment. I know that wishing you courage is far from enough right now, but please know that you are not alone. Hello, I'm Hae Jin Park, and I am a professional migrant. I was born in South Korea, raised in the rainforest in Paraguay, lived in other places around the globe until I finally settled in this country I call home. Being a migrant from an early age means that I bring with me the many colors of the places and their people that shape me as a person. I proudly carry an invisible cultural baggage that defines me beyond the ethnicity you have on stage right now. In fact, this tiny Asian speaks beautiful Spanglish, and I would not change Canberra for anywhere else in Australia, sorry. This life process, though, has not always been straightforward as one hopes for. As many of you here, I too went through the challenges and the predicaments of constantly adapting myself to a new society. There were times when misunderstandings and frustrations simply consumed me in deep sorrow. On many occasions, I even questioned my identity, and I wept at missed birth, death, marriages. Those were rough times. Yet, each move gave me the ultimate gift of the creation of a newer version of me. From a medical doctor and microbiologist, in actual fact, I also ran there too. I have reinvented myself as a historian since coming to Australia, and in the voyage of self-discovery, I came across the story of the Australian missionaries to Korea who, since 1899, brought much good to people, especially women and young girls in Busan and Gyeongsangnam-do province, the city and the region where I am originally from. A research that would not have been possible without the support from the Australia-Korea Foundation. Indeed, I decided to accept the nomination for the National Monument to Migration as an acknowledgement of the work of these incredible Australians, the vast majority of them women, who left this beautiful city on ships for a journey to Korea. As migrants themselves in the early 20th century, they went through incredible hardships that we could only imagine and speculate now. Yet, they did not let adversity define the purpose of their lives. When Tina asked me to bring an object that reminds me home, I immediately thought of that appreciation plaque that belonged to an early missionary to Korea, Miss Margaret Sandeman Davis. She went to Korea in 1910 and was the principal of the school that I attended as a child many, many months later. She was given this plaque just before leaving Korea for good in 1940 by the members of the church that she had actually set up. Among many other thoughts, this plaque reminds me that we are all here to do our bit in the building of a richer and fairer society, notwithstanding where in the world we are or where in the world we come from. Because at the end of the day, we are all migrants and children of migrants. And I feel immensely privileged that while collecting and remembering the past, I can serve as a nexus to keep the connection alive between two of my countries and celebrate the past that defines us in the present. Thank you.
Thank you, Hae Jin. Hae Jin has been nominated to the monument and funded by the Australia Korea Foundation. She's one of a number of luminaries who appear in an Australia Korea 60 Stories for 60 Years publication to commemorate the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two countries. So congratulations and thank you, Heijin. So some of you may know that this week we celebrate some important national days, including the National Day of Hungary on March the 15th and St. Patrick's Day, which is the National Day of Ireland on March the 17th. And on March the 25th, it is the celebration of Greek Independence Day. And today we add 91 new inscriptions honouring people of Greek heritage on the monument. So the museum has worked very closely with the Greek community on a special fundraiser to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Greek War of Independence and to honour the contribution of Greek Australians in building our nations. So again, if you would like to contribute to this initiative, please see our staff at reception. Now, our next speaker is Monique Mahuta of Dutch and Polish cultural background. Monique is also one of our donors, and she's recognising her family members Frank and Corrie, who met in Limburg, the Netherlands, after the ashes of World War II, in the 1940s. Monique is a former director of the Australian Government Department of Health based in Canberra, so please welcome Monique.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. My parents, Frank and Corrie Mahuta, emigrated to Australia from post-World War II Europe in 1951, newlyweds in search of a new beginning, opportunity, freedom and safety. My father, Franciszek Isidor Mahuta, was born in a small village in Poland not far from Gdansk in 1924. He was only 15 when World War II broke. And when the Russians invaded Poland, my father was one of the many Poles deported to work in labour camps in Siberia. I'm unclear as to how long my father was in Siberia, but I do know that he escaped by jumping off a moving train. He then made the difficult journey to Iran, where he joined the Polish forces, notably the 1st Armoured Division based in Scotland, fighting alongside their British allies and serving in the final phases of the Battle of Normandy, including the Battle of Falaise, something of which he was very proud. My mother, Hendrika Cornelia van Rinsum, was born in Rotterdam, Holland. She was only 7 when World War II began and had been sent to live with extended family to live in Limburg. But although she was young, she also clearly remembered the experience and the hardships of war. At the end of the war, my father did not believe he could safely return to Poland, so instead he went to Holland, where there was work in the coal mines of Limburg, and this is where he met my mother. They married in 1949. My mother was 18, my father 25. They remained in Holland for another year as they saved up the fare to independently pay for their passage to Australia. While they waited, my father wrote tirelessly to the Australian government on how he might secure employment. He would accept anything, anywhere. Ultimately, my parents were sponsored by an Australian farming family living in Angara on the Eyre Peninsula, 80 kilometres north of Port Lincoln. I don't know if anybody knows that region, but it's in the middle of nowhere, I can tell you. They arrived in Fremantle on the SS Grutebeer on the 20th of March 1951, exactly 71 years ago today, so it's quite momentous for us. A week later, they disembarked in Melbourne and made their way to South Australia. My mother did not see her family again for many decades, and my father never saw his again. Life could not have been more different from the Europe they left behind. A land of opportunity, yes, but the environment was harsh, was hot, stark, and isolated. My father first worked as a farmhand in Angara, and my mother worked the local telephone exchange. After 12 months, they moved to Port Lincoln, and this is where they built their first home, their community, their family, and lifelong friendships with other migrants like themselves. These friends became our family because we, like them, had no other. And this is why, for my parents, and now for us, family life has held so much importance. It wasn't easy. They spoke English, but not Australian. They had accents, and they didn't always understand colloquialisms or Australian humour. Our names were unusual, and we ate different food. There was little of the multiculturalism that we enjoy today. Still, my father, like so many migrants, was fiercely proud and determined to succeed. Sadly, in order for us all to fit in, this meant that we only ever spoke English at home, and we never learned the language of our parents. Both my parents studied at night school to improve their qualifications, and we ultimately moved to Woomera, where Dad worked at the Woomera Rocket Range, and then to Canberra to work at the Royal Australian Mint and ultimately for the Defence Department. So Dad went from farmhand to fitter and turner to mechanical engineer, as well as a fully qualified builder. He built all our homes. He was also determined that we succeeded, and none of us had completed our education, in his view, until we had been to university. While my parents' story is uniquely theirs, it is also the story of many migrants. A story of loss, of tragedy, hardship, prejudice, and yet a story of resilience, drive, hard work, and achievement in a country which always remained just a little bit foreign to them. Despite having made their home here and having raised 4 children, they always referred to themselves as New Australians, even after 65 years. I, however, like my siblings, my children, and my husband Philip, the son of a Latvian migrant, are proudly both European and Australian. Our values, our sense of place, are strongly shaped by the experiences of our parents, their histories, their visions, and their culture, overlaying our own experiences growing up in Australia. I'm so very proud to be part of this acknowledgement of the contribution of migrants to Australian society, and eternally grateful that my parents made the decision to journey to Australia here 70 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Monique's husband, who you've seen briefly, attending to our sick, ill guest. So Philip is our final speaker today. Dr. Philip Braslins is an Australian of Latvian cultural background and also a donor to the museum. He's a PhD in physician specialising in infectious diseases, a medical educator and formerly a clinical dean. He's also Director of Medicine at a rural regional centre in Bega. So please welcome Philip Braslins.
Thank you, Dana. Good afternoon. My name is Philip Braslins. I am a first-generation Australian with mixed heritage, born from the union of a Latvian immigrant father and an Australian bride, who met in the early 1950s in rural South Australia. I'm here today, as you are, to honour the life and stories of our forebears. We are nearly all migrants in this beautiful free land, and we have prospered from the determination and perseverance of our parents. Their lives and stories have shaped who we are and shaped the country that we all call home. The story I would like to share with you today is not unique. You will see many elements that are shared with your lives. I share this with you today not to highlight the tragedy lived by my family, but to give light to our shared experience and the hope that comes from our dreams for a better life. It is a story of people caught on either side of a worldwide calamity who came together in peace and love to build new lives and to bear children, me and my 3 sisters, the next generation, and those that come, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. My father, Ilguanas Gunars Braslins, or Guno, to his many friends, was evacuated from Latvia in 1944 with the retreating German army as a 15-year-old Flak-Helfer conscript, surviving a treacherous sea journey across the Baltic Sea and Allied bombing in the Ruhr Valley. His father, my grandfather, was taken from us by Russian forces in 1940, executed by secret agents in a notorious interrogation and torture centre in downtown Riga, only 2 streets away from his family home. Dad desperately wanted to fight against the Russians to protect his mother, to his country and fellow citizens, but found himself in the middle of a European war, fighting against people from many lands, some of whom he would later settle in Australia and he would call friends. In 1944, Gunars was separated from his mother Milda Lumanis, who escaped Latvia separately by train, which was bursting at the seams with a great tide of terrified, desperate people fleeing for their lives. Gunars and Milda, son and mother, were reunited by the Red Cross in Germany in displaced persons camps on either side of the country. Dad resumed his studies in Esslingen, West Germany, at Technical College, before embarking with his mother from Italy in 1949 to travel by sea to Australia with hundreds of fellow passengers on the USAT General Omar Bundy, a crowded converted troop ship. The ship carried souls from all over Europe and many individuals, couples and young families from the Baltic states, Eastern Europe, Mediterranean and other countries which had been devastated by the World War. The General Omar Bundy landed in Sydney on the 23rd of April 1949, part of the great wave of human migration to Australia by sea, which we honour and remember today. Dad knew little about Australia before arriving, but looked forward to starting his new life. As a requirement of his passage, Dad worked as a chanter for South Australian Railways for 2 years. Dad and our mother, Ailsa Jackson, a station master's daughter, met when he was 20 and she was just 16. Love quickly followed and they married 4 years later, just days after Mum completed her training as a registered nurse. Courting in those days had many challenges which Mum and Dad gleefully shared with us often. There was prejudice and wariness, fear of the unknown, of strange people from the other side of the world who had accents, ate exotic foods and wore colourful clothes. Guno learnt many Aussie swear words before he was able to speak English, and he always spoke with an accent to the amusement of his friends who mostly gently chided him for this. Dad became a technical officer for WRE in Adelaide and participated in atmospheric research launching early rockets from Woomera. He rose to be a scientific officer for the Department of Defence, a researcher for technical programs in the department which guarantees our security. Gunnar and Ailsa raised a family in Adelaide and then Canberra. Susan, Philip, Cassandra and Zintra are forever grateful for the opportunity given to their father to settle in Australia. And despite all of the challenges of being a new Australian, Dad felt welcome here and was proud of the life that he created. Milda Lumanis, our Omar, remarried in 1950 to Oskars Lumanis, our Papa, who migrated from a DP camp in Germany after the fighting in Latvia. Papa embarked on the SS Svalbard and arrived in Melbourne on 20 April 1949. They enjoyed life together in Adelaide, living in Richmond with their budgerigars and roses, cooking Latvian delicacies and doting on their grandchildren. Milda worked as an aide in a psychiatric hospital in Sydney in the 1950s, her work requirement to gain passage to Australia. But despite this, Omar never lost her style, wearing her hair in complicated buns, hiding its true length, which extended down almost to her hips, wearing perfume and fine tailored clothes in the European way. Omar encouraged me to pursue the career which she had been denied and imbued in me the importance of education for getting ahead in life. My grandparents and father spoke Latvian with each other when we visited, but to our lasting regret, Dad never spoke his native language in our home because he wanted us first and foremost to be Australian. I grew up as he wanted as an Australian, but he unwittingly gave me a more worldly view by sharing with me his Latvian heritage, culture and traditions through stories of his early life. I met Monique, my wife, at high school, and as you have heard from Monique, each of us have experienced the life of children in a migrant family. Reflecting on Monique's family story and mine, being here today brings to mind for me the important message that no matter what our origins, our history as the children of migrants who may have been on opposing sides during a great war, we can come together here in Australia, recognise and value both our similarities and our differences, and build a safe, inclusive and nurturing community for all. Let us not forget this lesson with all the strife we see in our world today, happening even now as we meet, that we are all people with needs, wants and dreams, and who can create a better life together for us all to thrive and prosper. And so on that note, let us remember all of our relatives who made their own life-changing journey across the vast oceans, leaving everything behind, to bring new ideas, cultures and traditions to this great land. And let us strive to continue that which is truly remarkable about Australia, our multicultural legacy that makes Australia one of the best countries to live in. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story with us, Philip, especially tied to that of Monique. It's such a resonant story for many of us, in fact for most of us, unless we're of Indigenous heritage. So overall, our speaker stories mould, I think, into a truly inspirational sort of set of reflections, really, which are both gifts and a guide for our time, especially when we consider what's happening around the world. And it really leads us to value the multifaceted character of Australia and the shared value systems that this place, this lands and these waters forge from us all. So really, thank you all, our speakers. It was really, truly inspirational, really on top of Craig Madden's Welcome to Country. So thank you. Let's thank our speakers. So, special guests, all of you, we hope you take some time to enjoy your day here at the museum. You can visit the monument. There is an accordion player, Ross Mayo. He's down under the eaves to the north there, and he will guide you orally around to the monument, which is just past the lighthouse. You can visit the cafe. There are food trucks here and other entertainers, as I mentioned earlier, peppered around the side. And market stalls at the front entrance. So thank you again, all of you, really, very, very important. You're all very important to us and important to Australia's national history of migration. So thank you for attending today and helping us create this wonderful occasion. So congratulations all. So let's thank our speakers again and thank you all.